Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man franchise, especially the second one, has received a lot of hate ever since its release.
I have to say, this is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. It is so bad. It has some of the dumbest writing I've ever seen in a movie.
And in terms of some of the story and plot elements, I completely agree with the criticisms. Sam Raimi and MCU Spider-Man certainly did a much better job at the script. But if there's one aspect in which Andrew's version truly stood out, it's his movement and choreography. To be fair, there had been a lot of great Spider-Man fight scenes, namely the iconic train fight in Spider-Man 2, the final fight in Spider-Man 3, and the MCU Spider-Man, being armed with a high-tech suit and part of a larger universe, was certainly able to pull off a lot more creative interactions of superpowers to defeat the opponent. But I want to make the distinction between a great scene and a great choreography. Because I think sometimes when you have good storytelling that's also charged with emotions and nostalgia, people can really forgive and even forget how average the choreography is. And yes, I am talking about Spider-Man No Way Home. Let's be honest, almost every fight sequence in this movie without Doctor Strange or Dr. Octopus were disappointing, to say the very least. There's no way that a combat against Electro and the Lizard in No Way Home could hold up against any fight scene in The Amazing Spider-Man 1 or 2. So today, let's leave the magic and the high-tech suit out of our judging criteria and purely analyze the movement in the Amazing Spider-Man films. The first difference that separated Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man from the rest was its attention to realistic details. Let's start from the most basic Spider-Man swings. I absolutely loved Spider-Man 2. But Peter and MJ were in the middle of a sea here, so what is Tobey Maguire hanging on to? A helicopter? In comparison, the first Amazing Spider-Man movie addressed this problem. Since Peter Parker had not mastered swinging through buildings at first, he actually required help from the tower crane operators to swing their jib arms for him to anchor to. Because there are several occasions where the web he shoots out misses the anchor point on top, whether it's too far or constantly moving. After finding the point of leverage, the Amazing Spider-Man also nailed the swinging motion better than any other Spider-Man. To me, most of the other Spidey swings don't make much sense. Think about it. Peter Parker Tarzans his way through an urban jungle with buildings of different height and arrangement. Yet every web string he shoots out just has the perfect length and forms the perfect pendulum? But what if the string is a little too long?
The movement of Spider-Man swinging is really inspired by what the stuntmen did in earlier parts of the movie.
Notice how in Andrew's version, there's often a moment of free falling before his next web string was fully straightened and his speed accelerates, which is kind of like bungee jumping. In fact, Andrew's Spider-Man featured a lot of free falling, and his suit that wasn't completely rubbery and airtight only sells the skydiving effect more with its wrinkles and ripples. This not only made his stunts appear more dangerous and exciting, but also helped him gain more momentum to travel an even longer range. Apart from that, Andrew also did a lot of quick adjustments in the midst of the web swing which the other Spider-Man rarely did, like climbing a string, or rapidly shooting out new strings to reposition himself when chasing opponent around the tower. I mean, just compare these two very similar scenes of Spider-Man fighting against Harry Osborn. There's no way that Tobey Maguire's body momentum could allow himself to swing around the building with one string for that long. It's easy to assume that because Spider-Man has superpower, so he should be able to break the laws of physics. But the Amazing Spider-Man simply didn't take such shortcuts. This brings me to my second point, which is the incredible agility and physicality of Andrew's Spider-Man.
One of the things we talked about very early on was Buster Keaton, and we were both huge Buster Keaton fans. Part of that was he did everything for real. You did things in longer takes. That was something that we always aimed for in the stunt and the action sequences.
In superhero films, I think it's almost always the case that the more overpowered the character is, the more boring the fight sequences are. Just compare Superman and Captain America. Although Captain America definitely has some superpower, most of the time he's just a really strong and well-trained martial artist, and that's what makes his fight scenes so much more interesting. Similarly, Andrew's Spider-Man was often just a skilled acrobat who's really athletic and sticky. Unless the situation called for the necessity of swinging, he simply wouldn't overexert his web shooting power. Instead, Andrew's usage of free running, scissor leg takedown, ground sliding, and riding on opponent's back actually resembled more of Black Widow's ninja-like fighting style, which I guess, well, still makes sense since they are both spiders. It's more grounded, functional, and efficient. Not to mention that he even detected his target through web vibration like a spider, crawled around more like a spider, and wrapped his opponent up like a spider, which were ironically the stuff that no other Spider-Man did. Finally, Andrew's Spider-Man had the smoothest flow of fight choreographies. One of the joys of watching a Spider-Man fight scene is seeing how Peter Parker redirects forces back to the opponent. The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 not only retained many of Spider-Man's iconic comic book poses, but also capitalized on the elastic nature of his superpower, by having many quick transitions between Spidey's defenses and attacks that flowed so effortlessly and naturally into each other within immersive long takes. And seeing how he flipped the disadvantageous situation around within a split second in an unbroken shot just made the fight scenes all the more convincing and satisfying. Some may say that this stylized camera work is unmotivated and has more of a video game aesthetic, but I think it really puts the audience in the subjective experience of Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man while he's fighting, so that we can experience the swing, the fall, the bounce, and the vertigo along with him. And it's honestly quite impressive how these franchise action scenes can both embrace realism and immersiveness at the same time. I first watched The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 in cinema at 15 and 17 years old. Upon revisiting it 9 years later, many aspects of this franchise have not aged well at all, but the movement and the choreography still looks as lit as ever. Hopefully, with the popularity of Spider-Man No Way Home, more people can begin to appreciate Andrew Garfield's version of Spider-Man, because he sure as hell is amazing. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't done so yet, and turn on the notification bell. If you disagree with me, also leave a comment down below. I mean, did you enjoy the fight scene from Spider-Man No Way Home? Which is your favorite Spider-Man fight scene? I mean, let me know. Thanks. I'll see you in the next video.